Hello everyone, it's Victor speaking, and I'm here today with Josie, and we are going to be discussing a little bit what's happening right now in the earth in regards to this coronavirus. It's a very disastrous period of time, I think, and maybe you guys need a little bit of an insight of what's going on and what might be happening in the future. So how are you doing, Josie?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me, Victor.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Well, the good news is that Josie will be available for readings from next week onwards. She's going to be having her interview with Lada. So you guys will have the chance to get to know her a little bit better, what type of astrology she uses and so forth. But I know she loves perfection a lot, and I'm sure today she got some stuff ready for us as well in regards to perfection. By the way, I'm going to have a perfection class coming up very shortly, I think on the 29th of March. So if you are interested, you will be able to find the link in the description box, and you will be able to sign up for it. How are you feeling about this coronavirus, Josie?
Well, being one of the people whose jobs was directly affected by it, it's easy to, go into like a state of shock or panic or fear. And so some of the things we want to talk about today is how to kind of raise your vibration around what's going on, and provide a little bit of clarity about that, because it is a really tough time for people, I think, and it's affecting a lot of people's lives in very powerful ways. So my intention around this video is, to kind of bring up people's spirits a little bit, or see some positives in this, or what we can do about it, because I'm in that similar position. And I have found some ways, and especially using astrology as an amazing tool, to be able to, think about like the higher consciousness, and kind of try to find the meaning behind why some of these things are happening, and how we can manifest more positives out of this.
I completely agree with you. I think plenty of astrologers received negative feedback because everyone was getting ready for a kind of war and some very dark period which we predicted coming up for 2020. And plenty of people actually said that, oh, astrology didn't work. No one has really predicted anything to do with coronavirus and so forth. But I do believe that the gift of astrology is to understand the deeper meaning of what is happening and why. And I don't think that the planets are causing the issue for us. They serve us and they give us a reminder that something needs to change. And you know what? Whenever I saw those comments people making about astrology, that it's not working and so forth, my question was that what's the difference between a world war and the coronavirus? Nothing really. So astrology is very good at pinpointing the outcome of possible constellations and so forth. But the process and how we feel about it, that's completely up to the person. And that's where the free will kicks in. So to give 100% accurate, forecasts of what's going to happen in the world, I think that's not really possible, and that's not what astrology should be about. It just should be a reminder of those energies and how they could manifest, and what we can do to make them, our ally rather than working against it. So yeah, of course, we had, I think everyone has heard a lot about the Saturn and Pluto conjunction. And I'm sure plenty of people felt this energy in the last 6 months. And it happened in January. And I think it was a reminder of that, power structure, what we live in. And that power structure does not serve us anymore. I think it is a reminder that the way we live our individual and collective life is just not working. It's not serving us anymore. Let's think about what happened with this Saturn and Pluto conjunction in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn talks about the government and the taxes. It's all about the structure. Pluto is the crisis, and it indicates that changes are needed. Things gonna come to light. Pluto is the planet of distortion and extremes. And when these two planets become a conjunction, actually they become one like the other. And this conjunction happens only every, 34 years. And therefore it is an important astrological event for the humanity, surely. But I think it practically prepares us for a new life and a new purpose. And I think the new purpose is, what I'm thinking is really that 1% of the population owes about 45% of wealth, and 60% of the population lives on $10,000 a year. And that's not normal. And I think these energies are talking to us about the changes we as humankind and the collective, that we should do something about it, because it's just not fair.
Well, and like you said too, astrology is an amazing tool, but all the planets have a higher and a lower, like they have a shadow side and they have a positive side, and it's kind of up to us and what you said, like about free will, to, take that knowledge and do something positive with it as well.
Exactly. If we go back to 2008, 2010, when we had this also world crisis, and it was pretty much again related to Saturn and Pluto anyway, I think Pluto really tried to restructure the economic system in the Earth. But we humans stood up, and our perspective to life did not change whatsoever. I'm just thinking about all the animal cruelties, the environmental pollution, and things like this, what has been happening. And these have been a huge topic in our lives nowadays. If you go on Facebook and Instagram, it's full of, protect animals and so forth. The ocean is dirty, and definitely I think what happens at the moment is that Earth wants to stop us and wants us to seclude a little bit and think about what we could do and how we could change our environment to have a better place of living.
And it's interesting that you say that, because in China, as a result of this crisis, there is like breaking news that now they're able to see blue skies and the stars as a result of, people isolating themselves and no carbon emissions.
Yeah, exactly. And all this coronavirus really started when Jupiter also moved into this conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
And Jupiter is the planet of greed. And I think how the nature responded was trying to hold us back a little bit. And then if we look around in the world, as you said, the air is getting clearer. Dolphins actually are coming back. The water is a lot clearer than it was. The air pollution has decreased a lot. So I think these signs, which we humans don't really look at, what this Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, and whatever planet wants from us. But as you said, they all have got this higher octave. So what do you think we should be doing as humans? How can we, live up to the positive energy of this huge conjunction?
Okay, so when I was thinking about the higher and lower vibrations of these planets, obviously Pluto and Saturn are both very powerful. They both have a very powerful shadow side to them. But on a positive level, actually, there's an image that came to my mind when I was thinking about the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, and it was this card, the Devil card. Now, this card has some powerful, alarming imagery. Don't be freaked out by that. But this card for me, and this is a Capricorn card, and it has a lot of Plutonic energy in it. So for me, this card is kind of Pluto and Capricorn, Pluto conjunct Saturn in a lot of ways. But if we talk about the meaning of that card, it's kind of like what you're saying, being enslaved to these material things. This card is about enslavement to something, whether that's addiction or, anything that makes you feel victimized or like you don't have power and control. So I think humanity is being called on to take our power back in a sense, and work towards manifesting that higher vibration of Pluto through transformation. And if you look at the tarot, actually it goes, the devil card is like in chronological order, it's the devil card, and then it's the tower. And we're also kind of feeling this right now where everything is turned upside down. Everything is really like chaotic. But the card that comes right after that is the star card. And the star card is an Aquarius card. And Saturn is moving into Aquarius. And so I think that part of the lesson that humanity is being called on to, kind of act out is that we need to, find our hope. We need to rebalance. We need to reunite and realize that those material things that we are enslaved by, or these people that are instilling like this fear and this sense of illusion and power and control, because the devil card is about illusion. It's like we have the power to take these chains off, but we remain stuck and bound to these things. And so I think this conjunction is about like releasing those. It's about breaking the chains, and it's about having, hope and rebalancing things and coming back together in humanity, coming back together as a group.
Aquarius energy is all about the humankind. It's all about the collective power. And Saturn is the greatest teacher of all. Going into the Aquarius, I am sure it will be about realizing that as a collective, there is no gender, there is no shape and size, there is no race, and all these type of discriminative things, what we tend to be using quite a lot nowadays. I think it kind of wants us to forget about all those, and and just looking at people like flesh and bones. It doesn't matter where they come from and so on. And all these border questions, I do get it. I do get it. We don't want them to come in. We want them to come in. But I think this collective power is all about money restructuring. That most of your money is stolen from you. I mean, you have a look at some of the countries, they pay like 45–50% of taxes after their wages. And what can we see? Nothing is happening. I think this super conjunction, what we have been feeling for 6 months, and then it's going to last for another 8–9 months, it wants to remind us that we are out of balance. Thinking about the climate change, the unusual weather conditions, fire in Australia. I think this wants us to wake up, basically. It wants to remind us that we do have the power. Do we need the best iPhone ever, and so forth? People need to walk hand in hand, regardless of, as I said, shape, race, gender, sexuality, and so forth. It doesn't matter. We are all alike. And I think because this energy is also sextiled by Neptune, which can make the huge message quite fuzzy and cloudy. So I think that's the reason why the country is going to go into quarantine very, very, not the country, sorry, the world is going to go into quarantine very shortly. Because we need that wake-up call. We need to seclude a little bit, think about the meaning to life, what's important for us. Let's just think about Uranus. Uranus being in Taurus, in the sign of Taurus since what, 6th of March 2019. Taurus talks about the economy, the financial situation of a country, and Uranus is a very eccentric, a wake-up call energy again. And what I'm trying to say with this is that the banking systems, the money questions, and what we need to think about in the upcoming 2–3 months, which one is more important, actually the money or your life? Which one, what do you value the most? I think this is what this energy is really talking about. And you know what? Did you see that someone tried to pay $150,000 to be able to go back home? And the person got a straight no as an answer. because we are in quarantine, no one can travel. I think this is again a sign that you cannot buy everything with money. Money is very important to have, but at the same time, it's not everything.
Well, and that Pluto and Saturn conjunction is happening in an earth sign, which does talk about those material earthly things. But if we look at Pluto and its qualities and what it represents, we can see that Pluto's energy is all around us right now. It represents our primal and survival instincts. It represents psychology, trauma, fear. It represents crisis, transformation, even possession. Everyone's trying to possess everything right now and grab all these material things to comfort themselves. It represents power, control, secrets, manipulation, and money. And these are all like big themes right now. And this is a ruthless planet. So if you want to understand Pluto better, just step outside your door. Take a look at what's going on in our current reality. But also realize there's a higher side to Pluto that represents deep bonding and intimacy, rebirth, detoxing. It makes way for new things. And it has the power to offer us growth, transformation, and empowerment. It does represent those primal survival instincts that we all have. Pluto represents, everyone's basic, and this is even in nature, the, will to survive, to reproduce, to heal, to evolve, and to adapt. So with that said, I think that it's something that we're being challenged to do as a collective. And that we need to kind of lean into that higher energy, a higher vibration of Pluto, because you can't fight Pluto.
Yeah. Did you have a look at the first case chart of the coronavirus?
No, I haven't.
I did have a look at it, and then I found something very interesting. So I did a little bit of a digging, and I think when it comes to mundane astrology, and I want to point out I'm not a mundane astrologer. Obviously, I feel like I'm good at interpreting energies, but mundane astrology, which is talking about the government and the worldly events, they are actually, we need to be interpreting things a little bit differently here and there. But what I have noticed is that there was a conjunction between Hygeia and Sedna. And these are very powerful points in the chart. So basically, Hygeia talks about hygiene, as the name suggests. That talks about healing. We're talking about asteroids, by the way. And Sedna, well, she was the goddess of the sea. And Sedna was forced to marry a dog by her father. And she was kind of forced to give birth to puppies. And then later on, somehow she managed to get away and she got married to a wealthy man. Well, at least she thought he was a wealthy one. But actually, she ended up being killed, and one of her arms actually got chopped off. And eventually, she found herself at the bottom of the sea, where she realized the true meaning to life. So Sedna in your chart is basically where you kind of need to die. It's like a little bit of a Neptunian and the Scorpion energy, what she carries. The patterns, which is not working for you anymore, and then you need to leave that behind. And then if I put these two together, well, it talks about some of our health, hygiene routines are just not working anymore. And I'm not talking about how you clean yourself up. I'm actually talking about how you clean the earth. And then we had also Ceres in the sign of Capricorn. So when we had this great conjunction, there was an asteroid called Ceres there as well. And Ceres talks about agriculture, talks about nurturing, mother instincts, and it talks about actually climate change, the environment, and food preparation. So I don't know if someone remembers, but I did mention in one of my prediction video that we're going to be running out of some certain type of necessities, such as rice and so forth. Well, I didn't think of a toilet roll, to be honest, but yeah, that's actually quite a Scorpion stuff. And when the first coronavirus actually appeared, which was on the 17th of November, the sun was actually in the sign of Scorpio, and it was opposing Sedna and Hygeia. And interestingly enough, Sedna has got this 100-year cycle in the Zodiacus period. So between 1865 till 1966, Sedna traveled through Aries. And this 100-year period saw the emancipation of women around the world, beginning with the forming of the suffragettes movement and ending with the bra burning women's libers of the 60s. And in 1966, Sedna gradually made her way into Taurus, and where she is still today. So, you know, what can Sedna in Taurus hold for the collective influence of humanity? Well, Taurus governs things like what we value. To my thinking, it is likely that our values will change and become increasingly orientated towards the spiritual considerations, especially in the next 20 years. Or we can choose that our, you know, half of our arms is going to get chopped off. I think Sedna represents our ultimate goal to be a free spirit. And the question again, do we want to become a victim of our vulnerability, or we actually want to gain our freedom back? And you know, Taurus is all about greed as well, to a certain extent, because that's a very materialistic sign. And all this greed and materialism will always have consequences.
So how long has Sedna been in Taurus, you said?
Oh, well, she's been there since 1966.
Mhm.
So 1966, 1970s. So if you really think about what happened at that time, that's when we started something like Microsoft, then we had the computers and so forth. So the modern type of stuff started around that time as well. Yeah. So
What year was the women like getting into the workforce? What year was that? Was that in Taurus?
yeah, it was already in the Taurus period. In the Aries period, they were fighting for their own rights.
That's interesting because the way that I understand that was actually a movement that was inspired by government in some way, because they're like, we have these families and why is only one of them paying taxes? So that's interesting because Taurus, as you said, can represent greed. And that's kind of what they did with that woman movement. They pushed it forward so that they could have two people in the household paying taxes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, even if we start thinking about what's happening right now, which is again a very Taurian energy, do you know any country who are debt free? Not really, right? So everyone is in a huge debt on a collective level and on a personal level as well. You can't even buy a house without loads of money.
Mhm.
So it's just, I think it's getting out of hand. So you had a look at some predictive stuff, don't you?
Yeah. So,
Do you want to share a screen and
yeah.
bring up a chart, maybe, so it's easier to explain?
Okay. So the two charts that we are looking at are going to be, because we can't cover them all, that's going to take way too long, are the US and Italy. So I'm using their solar return chart as well as using perfections. So I'll explain kind of as I go from both sides. There's a lot going on, so I'm not going to spend too much time on each of these. I'm just going to pick out the most important influences that I felt, or the most significant things, because there is a few powerful things going on. So the US is in a fourth house perfected year, which is in the sign of Pisces. So the rulers of Pisces are Jupiter predominantly. We will touch a little bit on the co-ruler Neptune. But the fourth house talks about the people and the homeland. And if we just take a look at their natal Jupiter, they have Jupiter falling in their eighth house in the sign of Cancer. The eighth house is a financial house and is associated with reversals, death, rebirth, crisis, and transformation. And their Jupiter is in pretty close conjunction with their Venus. Venus rules their 6th house of health, debt, conflict, and service. And their 11th house, which rules the masses gain. So it also rules things like stock markets, and it rules mass media, the internet. It's business house and rules organizations. This is interesting because the last time that the US was in a 4th house perfected year was from July 2007 to July 2008. And we know that this was the time of a massive global financial crisis. And in the sign of Cancer, what happened was it was caused initially by the bursting of the US housing bubble. So Cancer talks about housing. And a similarity in this chart is that Jupiter was retrograding in their ascendant as well. So when we put these things all together, just by looking at the perfected ruler, we already get a sense of what is going on. I think a financial crisis is something that we can definitely see again as a result of this crisis. However, the difference between this solar return chart and the one in 2007 was that in 2007, the solar return ascendant was in the 11th house and it was conjunct Saturn, which speaks directly about restriction of gains. And that Saturn had bad aspects both natally and in the solar return chart as well. So it speaks more about, the markets and things like that. But it's easy to see just from looking at the natal Jupiter how a health crisis easily fits into this energy that affects the masses and mass media with that conjunction to Venus. And of course, Jupiter is a planet that expands things. Jupiter is now also until the end of the year transiting their 2nd house, where it is at fall in Capricorn. And what's happening is the people represented by the 4th house, and they're in a 4th house perfected year ruled by Jupiter, are buying an abundant amount, Jupiter, of basic necessities and resources, things represented by the 2nd house. Out of fear and lack, we have Saturn and Pluto there. And what are they buying? They're buying Capricorn type of things. Capricorn, things that will preserve for a long time. All the canned foods are gone. All those kinds of things that last a long time. Those are the things that are being sold out.
Because the 4th house represents the country, but it also represents anything to do with minerals and the natural resources. Mm-hmm. Because in the natal chart, Jupiter is in the 8th house, which is again the shared resources. And also the 4th house talks about the political stability as well, in mundane astrology. And again, having Jupiter in the 8th house could indicate that actually the country might be running out of money or might be running out of, certain things what the homeland could provide. Yeah, and with the midheaven, which is in the 7th house, it looks to me that the country needs to be making a great collaboration with another country to gain those back, or to have those stuff in their country as well. Having that Neptune in the 4th house could be indicating that the people actually are not saying things clearly. Mm-hmm. They have no clue actually what's going on, or actually because the 4th and the 10th axis talks about the government, maybe it says that the government has no clue either what they are doing. Yeah, okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so if we take a look at their solar return chart just on its own here, Virgo becomes the 1st house. And you can see in comparison with their natal chart that solar return ascendant is conjunct Neptune. And Virgo's already a sign that represents health. And it's interesting because they're calling this a wet disease, that it came from a wet market. So when you combine the meanings of Virgo and Neptune, you're seeing that. And also it has pneumonia-like symptoms. So,
did you know that actually viruses are ruled by Neptune also?
Mm-hmm.
because Neptune is, well, it has got plenty of meaning, but Neptune could be talking about the mucous membrane. Actually, Neptune rules asthma, the blocked nose. Actually, whoever has got a very prominent Neptune in their charts, they shouldn't be drinking milk because their body cannot take it too well. And Neptune is also ruling. Neptune also rules the undiagnosable illnesses as well. And we are having a little bit of a trouble to be able to diagnose, you know, where this virus question is coming from.
Or even to find like a vaccination for it.
Yeah.
So Virgo is already a sign that represents health. If we look at where the ruler is in their solar return chart, it is in the 12th house. It is conjunct Mars, squaring Uranus here, and their natal north node is at 6 degrees of Leo. The north node has an energy of amplification. It also represents foreign and unusual things. So if we break this down, Mercury, yes, it rules communication, but it can also rule the lungs. Mars can rule inflammation. Mars is a planet that can attack and act fast. And it can even rule weapons. These two are square Uranus as well as the North Node. And Uranus has a shocking and disruptive influence. And it rules their solar return 6th house of health. And Uranus can talk about something that's unusual, progressive, and even something that is technologically advanced. Uranus is sitting in the 9th house of the solar return chart, so this is something foreign. But it also has something to do with animals, because the solar return ascendant is sitting in the sign of Virgo, and Uranus is ruling that 6th house. And the story about how this virus started is from a foreign food market, or from a wet market, which I found interesting. And Taurus rules food. So this conjunction is also happening in the sign of Leo, which is a sign that can represent government. And it's in the 12th house, which can represent foreign places, but it can also represent secret enemies, or behind the scenes activity or isolation. And that's kind of like an energy that we're seeing all around. A lot of people are isolated because of this virus. A lot of people think there's secret things going on.
I just want to add just a little bit to it, because first house in mundane astrology talks about the condition of the country as a whole. The state of law, the order, the people and their general outlook. It talks about the public health, the government, the reputation, and your position in the world. Now, because in the solar return chart, if you just bring that up, we can see Mercury being in the 12th house. It just tells me that US is not in a great position at the moment. US has got, well, you know what? I received so much hot and cold last time when I did my financial prediction. When I said that the stock market is going to collapse and the Bitcoin is going to go out of the window and we're going to run out of necessities and so forth. So I'm just going to say it. And then I'm just going to take the hot and cold again from people. But I think US has got something to hide. Ouch.
Yeah, and I think that, with Uranus and Taurus, they could be trying to move towards like a cashless society, or like electronic money. That is a possibility. Obviously, that's an extreme, but I mean, with what's going on right now, we need to be open to some of the other things that could be possible here.
Yeah. But again, 12th house could talk about quarantine as well. So it looks like this year, at least up till July, the country might go into quarantine themselves. So surely.
Well, and the fact that their solar return ascendant is conjunct their natal Neptune, and this transiting Neptune, or their solar return Neptune, is exactly conjunct their descendant. It seems like there's a strong Neptunian influence going on here, and it's happening between their 4th and 10th house, which is the axis of the people and the government. Neptune rules things like illusions, deceptions, is things unseen or mysterious. It rules films, it rules escapism, isolation, places of isolation. It rules with subconscious realms, spirituality, and it rules with confusion. And this is an outer generational planet. So it refers to the conscious collective. And so I feel like there is some, you know, mass illusion or deception that could be at play here. And this is not just for the States. I think that, like, what this reminded me of is we just had a full moon in Virgo. And that full moon in Virgo was, the sun was conjunct Neptune. And this is like something that happened as a collective. So at this full moon, this is when this issue became really full blown and was very visible on a worldwide scale. And when social media totally exploded and I couldn't go on Facebook without every second post being about coronavirus. The moon in astrology represents people, and the sun in astrology represents government and authority figures. So the moon was at fall in Virgo. It's weak there. It doesn't do well there. Virgo carries the energy of the sixth house, which is considered a difficult house. It rules with health, disease, conflict, service, lower levels of humanity, debt, daily routines. And it's a detail-oriented sign, and it's practical, analytical. It seeks to perfect things. That's why the moon is at fall here, because it can create overthinking. It can create stress. It can create anxiety, and can give some sensitivity towards health issues. But where was that light coming from in that full moon? It was coming through the lens of Neptune. And this is interesting because everybody keeps saying, I feel like I'm in a movie. That's kind of what reality seems like right now. And why does Neptune rule film in the first place? How do they produce a film? They use fake props, they use backdrops, simulated effects, they use manipulation of light and angles, music, actors, but it's made in a way that feels real. And Neptune rules the subconscious realm. And what is the best way to tap into the subconscious? It's by using music, imagery, pictures, emotions, repetition to change and alter the state of a person. And when these things are combined, it can put you in a hypnotic state even. And that's why Neptune also rules things like imaginary worlds and escapism. For example, like, have you ever tried to talk to someone who's fully engaged in like a video game? They're in like a trance-like state. You can't talk to them. Like they don't even know that you're there. So my point with saying that is that with that sun conjunct Neptune and that full moon, when all this stuff was at a peak, is that I think that we need to become a lot more conscious about what we're taking in, what we're watching, what we're being hypnotized by at this time, because we could be more sensitive to these influences. And I think as a collective, we kind of need to lean into the energy of Virgo a little bit and be more critical about what we're allowing in that's creating all this mental stress, and work towards like a higher level of consciousness, because what you feed grows, even energetically. Where focus goes, energy flows. So media, including social media right now, is fueling the fire that's producing more energy around fear, lack, scarcity. And a lot of people are feeling really scared and helpless and uncertain right now.
Yeah, I think you are spot on. I think the fear, which is, I've had that feeling for a while now, but I think the fear which get generated by the government, I think we just went overboard with it. And then the intention, I'm not saying that there is an intention behind that they want to scare people off, but because Neptune, as you said, rules TV and movies and so forth, I think people should not listen to those so much. Again, yeah, if you withdraw yourself from all those negative energies and then you obey the rules, what Saturn wants to teach you with, alongside with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, I think nothing major could happen. But there needs to be an element of drawing a line between reality and dreams and the illusions. And at the moment, there is the sextile going on between the two planets, and it seems to be out of balance. That's how I see that. Yeah.
I also just want to mention too that, you know, Mercury has been spending a lot of time in Pisces, and now it's currently moved back into Pisces. And yes, it's debilitated, and this is like a very confusing time for us, and it will be there until April 11th as a collective. But we have to remember that Mercury rules choices, Mercury rules decision making, and it's in the sign of Pisces. So yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but there's, you know, I have Mercury and Pisces natally. There's some gifts that come along with this. And the lower end of Pisces is, you know, the victim state, feeling helpless, or using escapist tendencies and letting that consume our thinking as a collective. But there's a higher vibration of Pisces, which talks about healing, being creative, being imaginative, being empathetic. And that talks about us connecting to something higher than ourselves and having faith, even if it seems idealistic to others.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like an energy we could also be harnessing right now, fueling that fire more than, you know, the one of fear and helplessness and victimhood. So we have an opportunity with that. You know, being someone that lost my job because of this, it caused me to reframe my, you know, perspective, which Pisces can do that. So
I
those are
think for you Americans, it's going to be very important that Mercury period till the 11th of April, as you said, because Mercury rules the whole solar return chart for the year. So I think the next 6 weeks is going to be very crucial. And unfortunately, I have to mention, because it's going to be happening in the 7th house as well, probably the number of illnesses and the infected people will grow in the next 6 weeks there.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, especially because there is also Neptune around as well. So let's hope it's not true, and US will come out of this situation very well. But unfortunately, the energies seem to be talking about something else.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so also using the perfected months, Pisces being the July perfected month, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. January was the actual first case that was confirmed in the US. But if we move forward, February, March, April, May, Viktor did mention in one of his articles that May 13th was a significant date. And I think that relates to the state specifically because it just so happens that that perfected date is also on the exact same day as the Saturn South Node conjunction using perfection.
The reason why I set to mark down May 13th is because Mars is going to be out of Saturn's orb by transits. And actually, I did believe that that could be a time when the borders between countries will start opening up again. Of course, it's chart specific as well. And yeah, looking at the US chart, surely it could be indicating actually, you know, a massive breakout around that time of the virus. So maybe they are still in a preparation phase there. And how do you see Italy's situation? Because considering the population, the ratio, you know, the ratio between Italy and China population is obviously China has got like 100 times more people than Italy. But they've already have got like 40,000 people afflicted in this situation. So why do you think they've got so many?
Okay, so if we look at the chart of the natal chart of Italy, they are in a second house perfected year, which is a Jupiter ruled year. I also found this interesting because China, the US, Italy, and Canada are all in a Jupiter perfected year, and Jupiter is in its fall position in Capricorn. but their natal Jupiter is sitting in the 12th house. The 12th house relates to not only isolation, but it relates to losses, and it is in conjunction with Chiron.
Yeah. And you know, in mundane astrology, actually the 12th house could be talking about financial losses, expenditure, group hospitalizations, foreign debts, wars, and smuggling as well. And because we're talking about Libra, and Libra talks about pleasure and amusement resorts, tourism, but actually it does talk about the bond of relationship as well among the masses and such things like business establishment, foreign affairs. And I find it interesting what Italy does is because did you see those videos where people are singing and playing instruments on their balconies? I think
Mhm.
they started using that collective energy in a different way. And probably this is one of the reasons because they are trying to amuse each other with that Libra Jupiter energy, what they have got natally. They are one of the most visited countries in the world. So
Yeah.
financially, it is definitely a torture for them.
Hmm. And like a similar kind of influence, in the chart of the United States, I seen them having a very heavy Neptunian influence, where in Italy, I seen a very heavy Plutonian influence. Their solar return ascendant is conjunct Pluto, and Pluto is squaring the moon, which represents the people in mundane astrology. And in their solar return chart, that would be falling in the fourth house, also representative of the people. Now, if we look at their solar return chart by itself, this is where things get kind of intense. Not only this year are they having the Saturn Pluto conjunction in their solar return sixth house, which talks about health and debt and disease. But Pluto is conjunct their solar return ascendant. So this is like a massive Plutonian energy, and the moon is in the sign of Scorpio anyway. So when we look at their solar return chart, one of the first things we see is that they're having this massive grand cross. And a grand cross is where there are 4 90-degree squares between 4 planets. And this is a mutable grand cross, which deals with change, with flexibility, with communication. But the mutable signs can also be referred to as the destroyers because they have the power to change. So something that was started represented by cardinal signs and something that was maintained represented by fixed signs. It is the mutable signs that can change it in a way, change things in a way that are no longer recognizable. So there's a huge Plutonic theme going on when we look at Italy.
Yeah, and you know they are in a second house profected year as well, which primarily deals with the national wealth, the status, the relationship within the country and with its neighbors. It also rules actually the purchasing power of the people, the national income, the strength of the currency. You know, it really looks like it's fluctuating for them because in the second house there is also in the solar return chart there is moon there. So financially, I'm sure it is a huge loss for the country, and it's going to be very hard for them to stand up from this situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's tough. Okay. Overall, I believe having a look at all these charts and considering all the energies, as I said, I think around the 13th of May, some of the borders are going to be opening up, most probably, especially in Europe. And then I do believe that around the 2nd of July, actually the coronavirus is gonna kind of stop. It doesn't mean that it's going to stop everywhere, but the majority of the countries are going to be somehow free of it. And most probably by the end of the year, around the 19th of December, I don't think the coronavirus is going to be causing so much of a trouble anymore. The rest of the world as well. Now, if you think about that, at the end of the year, that Saturn and Jupiter conjunction is going to be happening in the sign of Aquarius, the very last time. It tells me that the resolution for the coronavirus is going to happen. However, I do also believe that the coronavirus is not going to go away, though. It's going to be a reoccurring theme, and most probably it's going to be around at least till 2023. But I also believe that around, well, between May 13th till July the 2nd, they are going to be coming up with some vaccine, which might be helping this case. So that would be my personal prediction of what's going to happen to the coronavirus. Overall, I would recommend to people to try to stay away from the media as much as possible, because I think it's blown out of the ballpark. I also believe that we need to use as a collective power this time to reflect of what's going on in our lives, and also what's going on in in the earth as well. And I think, as I said at the beginning, all these energies are happening because this is our duty as well. That's Saturn, talks about duties. It's our duties to actually protect where we live. And walking hand in hand with each other, we can actually conquer this illness. We don't need government's help. We don't need vaccine and so forth. We just need to see the power in each other. And you know what? Raise the vibration of your body. And there are so many exercises there. Do a little bit of a meditation. And search the meaning to life. You know, what you value the most. And once you realize those, I think this is going to start getting better and better.
Well, and this is an amazing time to kind of practice gratitude, because what have we all been saying for so long? Like, oh, I wish I didn't have to work. I'm too busy to do this and blah, 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 blah. Now we have the time to kind of do those things. I know it feels forced, and, you know, it's easy to see that as a negative, but where can you draw positives? Read that book that you haven't had time to read, cook those meals, or take care of yourself in a way that, you know, you make excuses, you know, I'm too busy, or I have too much work, or, you know, if you're a workaholic, you don't get to spend that much time with family. You know, there's a way to practice gratitude for the, you know, time and opportunity to do those things as well right now. And it's important to focus on those things, because there is always positive in dark situations, or light in darkness. There is always. It's just a matter of changing your perception.
I completely agree. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you like the video, please press like and share some love with us. Thank you very much, Josie, for joining me today. It was a pleasure as always.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.